Hello, good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining from. Thank you for joining our webinar. Is this the end of the migration era? Empowering migrations to Business Central SaaS. I will be the first one to welcome you for today's event. And today we have wonderful three guest speakers joining from Microsoft and partner organizations and Companial expert to confirm or deny the facts about the end of migration era. So stay tuned with us for the next 60 to 90 minutes. Again, allow me to shortly introduce all of the speakers for today. The first one, Tim Shaw, a Microsoft expert from Australia, who will provide a brief overview of the new Business Central functionality with a primary focus on Business Central features in the cloud, and will help us to identify the features that help to facilitate the migration to Business Central online. Tim will also discuss how to accelerate migrations to Business Central SaaS, to the platform, what are the Microsoft incentives available for you as the partners, and also all the benefits to you as Microsoft Dynamics partners. Next, we will have Dynamics partner, Joerg, joining from Theta Systems, who will share his experience on successful Business Central migrations and implementations in New Zealand. Then Dennis Chan, co-founder and director at iCatalyst, will also share success stories and how they launched their business with iCatalyst, and especially with the focus on Business Central implementations and migrations. Finally, my colleague, Martynas Butrimanskas, our Companial Business Central lead, who will discuss how we as Companial serve our partners and their customers in successfully migrating them towards the cloud, and also how we ensure that partners maintain those customers successfully on Evergreen on the cloud version. So stay with us and learn about the latest features of Business Central and also the strategies of how successfully to migrate your NAV and Business Central customers to BC online. And of course, how to maximize the Business Central potential. So it would be very nice to also learn. So I believe we have a lot of partners, NAV and Business Central partners joining to today's webinar. And just for curiosity, we will now be launching the poll. And we would like to understand what is the actual percentage of your install base that you have actually already moved to Business Central Online. So if you could just select the option that best fit your organizational overview of how many NAV or Business Central customers you've already moved to the cloud. So just pick that option, and then later we can reflect on the results. And now, very quickly, before giving the scene to our guest speakers, shortly about Companial. So basically, we are cloud experts, but also migration experts, and we have established our business back in 2009, and our primarily focus is within business applications, and we have a very strong and big experience in doing NAV to Business Central upgrades. So we have done more than 800 of those. We have, of course, a strong presence also in X and finance and supply chain management area, as well as like customer engagement and CRM area. So we are doing migrations, implementations, and development services in those fields as well. So also to ensure the successful transition towards the cloud. We, back in 2015, established like a platform to also support on-premise customers on Azure. So now we have more than 1,500 of customer applications running on Microsoft Azure data centers, and especially those that are not able to move at the current stage to Business Central Online. And actually, we will also tackle all those limitations that partners are facing while they cannot move straight forward to Business Central Online. Apart from the professional and technical services that we do at Companial, we are also recognized as Microsoft Inner Circle member for the 8th year in a row. And in addition to that, we are Microsoft ISV Development Center, basically helping biz apps and engineering teams with strategic initiatives like ISV Activate or Accelerate program for Business Central partners, or SMA within DMP program for finance and supply chain management partners. So if you would like to learn more on how we as Companial can enable you and your client base for the successful migrations, let us know. We are here to help. And now we will have our first guest speaker, Tim, coming to the stage and basically introducing Business Central, the newest features and the features that help to facilitate the migration towards Business Central Online, and also the ever nice incentives and the things that Microsoft has to offer to support you, the Microsoft Dynamics partners, for the journey to the cloud. So Tim, over to you.
Thank you, Ugnė. And you're okay to change the slides for me? Thank you. I'll just, say next slide from time to time. So hello to everyone. It's actually super exciting to be on this call today and talk about Business Central. I've come out of a meeting earlier today, which is, I can't tell you much about yet, but let's just say FY24 is going to be an exciting time for our partners that are working with Business Central, as well as our customers. And Business Central is still the fastest growing business app we have at Microsoft. So for the partners on this call that have been investing in their practices to deliver these services, wait to find out what's happening in FY24, but I think you'll find it pretty exciting. So where we're at with the market now, I'll just quickly go through a couple of slides just to reposition things. So there's been an accelerated pace of change brought on by COVID, by a lot of businesses trying to mobilize and transform digitally in a short period of time to ensure that they can actually manage a hybrid workforce where people are working from home, and these days working from home, but also working in the office. So there's different digital business models, people selling through e-commerce, etc. There's been talk about global market volatility, less lately than earlier in the year, but that's great. That actually seems to be coming down a little bit. And this hybrid work and the gig economy, so everything is it's actually quite hard to get workforce back into the office if they've been working remotely. And I think it's also opened up new opportunities to how we work with our workforce. So we might go forward one, please. So rapid change. So there's a comment here, and this is a global thing from IDC, that 20% of SMBs will cease operations by 2025 because they cannot pivot fast enough to digitize their operations to meet customer demands. So that's come through there. 73% of employees want flexible hybrid work options to stay post-pandemic. Makes sense. I know I do. And then 76% of CFOs are dissatisfied with cross-functional collaboration to bridge the gap between operational and financial planning. And it's quite interesting. I'm spending quite a bit of time out at a couple of customer sites at the moment, and it's interesting to see that this statement is still very much true, where there is a difference between functional gap and between operational and financial planning. So that's come directly from Gartner. So that's kind of where we are. And with a product like Business Central, when our customers take that up on the cloud, they actually, for today, for instance, they'll have access to the latest technology, Copilot, which I'll talk a little bit about as I go through these slides, without the need to necessarily go through a whole, should we upgrade? What is the process? How much is it going to cost? So that's kind of what this is all about, is how do we enable our customers for rapid change? So let's go forward a little bit. So I'm going to talk about why the online service should be the first choice today. To quickly go across the Bridge to Cloud version 2 to make sure that all of our partners understand what that is. And then I want to come back and talk about why this is important for you as a partner, as well as for your customer. So let's move on to the online service. So Dynamics 365 is built on the Microsoft Azure stack. I think pretty well everybody on this call will know this and probably have seen this slide before. But what this means to a customer is a little bit different, especially when we talk about identity, security, management, and compliance. You may or may not know, but every year our online services are pen tested. So basically, we're trying to see if third parties can hack into Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central, as well as sales, as well as F&O, and as well as all the other products. And that's important because although we've got a platform built on Azure, which has the tools and the capability to be secure, be compliant, and make sure identity is actually real, when you build an application, you can do things that will circumvent that and allow people to get access to the service. So it's important to understand that when we talk about Business Central, we are actually pen testing. The framework we set online is designed to ensure that our public cloud is secure. Then to the next level of security, the reality is if you're in the Azure data center, you're going to be a lot more secure than majority of our customers' offices. There's a lot of resilience, there's a lot of backup, there's a lot of programs in place to keep everything secure. Patches are being automatically applied, and it is a true software as a service. So I don't have an issue where I've got update keys. I don't have an issue where I have to worry about updating SQL Server or any of that sort of thing. And that's kind of the important thing to remember when we talk about the SaaS service. So we might go forward one. The application security, this is a very quick one, and I'm sure everyone on this call will pretty well know this, that we have security at multiple levels. First of all, at identity level for authentication. So if you're not using multi-factor authentication today, then turn that on as soon as possible. And then we have the authorization, so the license, database access, company access, object and record access, all built on the top of the SQL Server database. So it's important to understand that. It gives us authentication, authorization, auditing, data encryption, and security development lifecycle. Keep going. The other thing I wanted to point out, and as we talk about why the online service is there, so there's certain features that are not implemented on-premise. Some of those can be implemented if you set up your own services. Others just won't be able to be set up on-premise, and that includes things like the default Power BI, late payment prediction, because we use our own service to actually facilitate that, company hub, external accountant, the connection to Shopify, share to Teams, invite your external accountant, and the sandboxes that are there. And there's a few other features as well, which is on that link there. But it's important to understand that when you go on-premise, you don't necessarily get the full capabilities of Business Central. So that's number one, why the online service should be looked at as priority one. If we go to the next page, I've got a dog that's just come and sat on my lap, and that's great. When we talk about seamless service and reliability and performance, so today we have 5 customers in Australia that are over 500 concurrent users. One customer, which is dear to my heart, has 330 concurrent users, does about 72,000 picking slips a day. And for those that were able to get directions in Asia, hopefully we see, if you didn't get there this year, hopefully we see you next year. You would have heard Mike Morton talking about scalability is not an issue for Business Central. And it's also not the reason to choose finance and operations versus Business Central anymore. And I don't think it ever actually was. But the reality is now we're there. With the latest version 22, we actually moved the core to .NET. And that's, I think, if I can remember, the performance increase of 30 or 40% might have actually been higher. But just the increased work on the performance over the years that we've done based on the telemetry we've got, we have a great lean product that can scale up into larger operations. So things like OData calls are now faster, opening pages are faster, there's a performance toolkit, that allows you to actually do the data life operational scenarios and tune the code for your application. Visual Studio AL language. If you're at Directions, you would have seen, I think it was Dimitri up on stage, programming using Copilot, which basically filling a lot of lines of code automatically. We have support for additional 080 roles for customer admin. You can restore environments to historical states. And then the big thing is that we're working on the compliance, so making sure we meet the compliance requirements across the world. And there's a lot more information on the seamless service and the updates and the release notes. So if we move forward. Telemetry, I think this is underrated sometimes. Kenny's doing a lot of work on this. The telemetry that's visible, and this has been the big change from NAV to Business Central, is that now Microsoft is in the game from performance. It's in the game for how customers use it. We know how our customers use the product. We work to make sure the product, as we improve it and move it, actually meets the majority of customer needs. So if there's things like, from a performance perspective, long-running SQL queries, you can see that, report execution times, we can see extension versions, update errors, web service requests, a whole heap of things we can see through Azure Insights. And today, if you haven't looked at the app, you can see if a customer is telling you the truth, or what's a better way of saying that, is aware of how their users are actually testing the system. So you can actually see how much time they're spending in the system and what they're spending their time on, and validate that they actually are testing the system before go live. So there's use in telemetry, not only from looking at your service and managing and giving you that insights into how the application works and what's happening, but it's also helpful to when you're onboarding a new customer. And when we talk to people that are used to getting into the back of SQL and doing SQL queries and things like that, what we're trying to do is move them away from there, because that's the area where things can happen that you may not know are happening. So people can do things if they've got access to SQL that you may not want them to doing. And today, using the telemetry, you can pretty well do everything you could do in SQL about finding out how the system's acting and why it's doing something a certain way. And then from a back-end perspective, Microsoft is able to actually pinpoint where performance issues are coming from. So are they coming from the SQL Server, application side, what code they're coming from, etc. And that's a big step ahead to where we were when we were just an on-prem application. So if we go forward a little bit, global availability, this is really out of date. So we've actually got, I think, another 20, 30 countries on top of this. This is a priority. And I will say, from speaking to the team around localization, what we are trying to do is we're trying to move functionality that may have been localized for certain countries into global when it makes sense. So rather than Sweden having a certain functionality and Australia having a certain functionality, we're trying to say, well, is this functionality global? If so, let's move it back into core. There's a program in works behind that at the moment. And then we're expanding geographies through partners, building extensions for the localization requirements. And sometime down the track, all the localizations will be extensions. So you can turn Australia on, you can turn New Zealand on, you can turn other countries on. That's further down the track, but that's kind of where our target mine is of today. So that's also another reason why the online service is now capable. We are working on the island areas of this region, so places like Fiji, etc. And we are looking for partners to build the localization for those particular areas. So if you're interested in doing that, there's no exclusivity on it. So if all of our partners want to build it, that's up to our partners. But if you're interested in building, we can connect you to Alexander, and we can work through that. But global availability is there, and in Australia and New Zealand we have it, obviously, so there's no issues here. And also across APAC. If we move forward, there's a lot of customer names here. Not all these customers are using Business Central, but there's a lot of logos. There's a lot of customer stories. Today, when we look at the product, we have, I think it's 35,000, and well, that was 2 months ago, customers worldwide. I think that's the official number we release. That's on Business Central online, right? That doesn't include anything to do with on-prem, NAV or GP. The numbers go up quite higher when you start grabbing NAV and GP into the mix. But we have a lot of customers and we're growing. And our 100+ user accounts are growing 115% year on year. So whilst in Australia, the four largest customers are over 500 users, I have seen a customer globally that's 10,000 users. They're not doing what you would normally do with Business Central, but just to give you an idea, depending on what's required, there are scenarios where we do more users. We have a lot of success stories. As I said, I've talked to the large users. We've got transaction volumes going through in Australia, large transaction volumes. And this is being made possible by what we call the concierge. So the concierge is a team from engineering. So far, they've worked with, I think, 4 customers in Australia. And I believe they're working with 2 in New Zealand at the moment. But they basically are a bridge between partner and engineering to help migrate those large customers. So they're there to unblock things. And what they're doing out of that is they're getting stories. So we'll be coming back to you with a lot of success stories around large customers moving to Business Central Online, so you can have the confidence that moving to online is not a mistake and is the right thing to do by not only your customer but also by your own business. So there's a link to customer stories there. There are customer stories. Obviously, there's a lot more customer stories than what we have because we are through partner, but expect updates of that in the new fiscal year as well. We move on. So offers. So that was a little bit about why you should talk about cloud. If you have issues around scalability, discussions between other products and our product, even our other products, then please reach out to me and let me know what those are about, and I'll try and help you, because we do have positioning statements on that now, and scalability is not one of them, one of the reasons. So bridge to cloud. So active enhancement plan. Basically, the Dynamics 365 online cost equals the enhancement plan cost. It's got to be equal or greater than. Promo users are still available. There's dual access rights. So if you have a customer that's going to go live in 6 months and their BREP's due now, then they should be taking up this offer, because otherwise they're going to pay BREP for 12 months that they only want for 6 months. That would be silly. It's a 40% discount, so it's no longer the 60%, but there's still a discount there that they still get. It's 3 years and non-renewable afterwards. This is all not new commerce partner-led, so it's only for our commercial customers. We don't do the same offer on educational government. They already get, and not-for-profit, they already get a great discount as it is. And obviously the sign-up of this finishes December 31, 2024. So it's great to know that that program continues. So if you've got anybody still paying BREP, then you should consider this, because your margin on CSP is more than what it is on BREP. And the other thing is the margin on CSP is not affected by your renewal rate. So for those dealing with BREP will know what I mean. But CSP, we don't change the margin based off your renewal rate of your BREP customers. So the reality is a customer, you'll make more money, plus, as a partner, you'll make more money, but as a customer, you're going to get a significant discount on the product. Which we don't normally do for Business Central because it's already well priced. So let's move on. So why? So the question is from a partner, why do I really want to migrate my customers? I've had talks with them. They're either interested or they're not interested. So I'm not really worried about it, right? So if we move forward a little bit, let me give you some ideas. So there is customer retention issues going on, and it's more Microsoft's not losing it. It's actually the partners are losing the customer to other partners. I've got a number of cases. I've probably got 5 or 6 in the last 2 months where I've had to deal with a partner working with a customer that is attached to another partner. So from a customer retention bit, if I've had the product 5 years or longer, so if I've got 2018 or before that, then what is it doing for me? Is it actually giving me value? Is it giving me the ability to continue changing in this digital world? Is it resilient? And the reality is, if we go back to role tailored clients in 2018 and before, we're in a different league today. So that's the interesting there. It might be out of support, so there's a risk for a customer being out of support for their product. That's normally considered as a larger risk. As I said, there's more it's not just evidence, it's fact that partners are losing their customers to other partners because they're not talking innovation, and another partner's getting there and talking about innovation. And our competitors are starting the conversation too. So we have our competitors trying to put out messaging to our customers to, instead of going to upgrade the product, migrate to their product. Now, the reality is, if we're doing the bridge to cloud, we've already got a 40% discount on our normal pricing, which is cheaper than the main competitors anyway. And it's probably going to be easier learning path for a customer moving forward onto Business Central than it is to another product. So there's a lot of reasons for that. Ongoing costs. So as a partner, supporting multiple versions is an overhead. We could probably argue and do numbers and work out what that actual overhead is. But it's definitely an overhead because you've got staff that need to know the latest version and they need to know a previous version. And there's always that potential for making a mistake, thinking that one version handles something the same as others. And let's face it, Microsoft is doing all the improvements on the latest versions. We do backport some things, but if you're talking products that are out of support, then we're not doing anything with them. And the other side of things from a cost perspective, if you are creating apps, which is a great area to kind of invest in, then maintaining those apps for different versions reduces your margin as well. So instead of updating it for the latest version, I'm updating this app to go across 5. It's extra costs that you wouldn't have to have if your partners were all on the same version. So there's a reason why Microsoft likes this product called Evergreen. It is a little bit about, there is a component of it being good for the customer to have the latest technology, but there's also a component for us that investing, keeping a product up to date, one product up to date, is a lot more economical for us than trying to keep multiple products up to date. That's why we like the Evergreen. That's why we continue to invest, and we don't backport every change we made, even if the previous products are actually still supported for on-prem. But ongoing costs is something that a partner needs to worry about. If we go forward a little bit, margin, I already mentioned that. You make more margin out of CSP or new commerce than you will out of BREP. There's cloud incentives on top of that. So when you sell cloud licenses, you get cloud incentives. And there's a way to build IP and continue using the IP much easier on Business Central today and on the cloud through AppSource than there is previously. From a revenue perspective, you move on to ongoing subscription revenue then rather than one bill that you've got to chase yearly. So for those that are chasing BREP, each year I need to go and chase that money. I suppose still when you're on Bridge to Cloud, you've still got that thing, but once they get to cloud fully, it's a subscription that continues on. Potential to sell apps to your customer base and others. So if I'm working and putting my resources on the newest product and building those apps, I've got that. You've also got the ability to expand your services, do more IP, Power Platform. So you would have heard directions that Mike Morton, the General Manager of SMB, he doesn't just look after Business Central anymore. He looks after Business Central, Power Platform for SMB, and sales and customer service for SMB. He's not developing Power Platform, sales, and customer service. Don't get that wrong. Those teams are still developing it, but he has input to make sure those products work with Business Central and also to make sure they're suitable for our SMB customers, which is super important. The other thing on revenue, which I'm not sure if I mentioned first, but I'll say it now, there is no real new revenue for you as a partner by upgrading a customer. It's literally retaining revenue you're already getting. And that's important because from that perspective, this is kind of where we bring in scale partners like Companial. From that perspective, you have to consider, do you want your team doing the upgrade, or do you want a third-party upgrade and let your team work on new revenue opportunities or building revenue that actually increases your revenue? Because if I upgrade somebody from, and this is probably what stalls some people, so if I upgrade somebody from NAV 2018 to Business Central, what's in it for me? Well, as I already spoke, A, you're going to get a bigger margin, and B, you're retaining a customer because you've got them on a journey. Although you could say, well, I'm still making the same revenue, and we could argue over margin sort of levels as well. But the thing is, when you do that, you are just retaining the same amount of revenue. Yes, you are getting more margin, but you're retaining it. So you're better to focus your resources on new business and those new customers and building applications that you can sell to your existing customers than to necessarily build a business around migration, because it won't help you from a sales revenue. That's kind of where you need to consider as your business grows. Do I need to backfill the migration component and concentrate on new revenue? And that's kind of why we bring partners like Companial to the table to offer those services. If we go forward one, I think I'm getting close to the end. I think this is my last one, if I remember rightly, Ugnė. So I think the main thing I want to do is just say the traditional small business accounting systems inhibit growth and make it difficult to adapt to disruptions and rapid change. So we need to make sure our customers, no matter what size they are, can innovate, and that's where Business Central comes into the play. As I said, next FY24, I'll give you more information in July, but there will be more focus for our Business Central partners than what there has been this year. So you can read into that what you like, but let's just read it positively, and I'll give you more of an update in July when I'm allowed to get past embargoes and things like that. And back to you, Ugnė.
Thank you, Tim. So indeed, Business Central, the security, the platform capabilities, the seamless service, so many great features that help partners to facilitate this migration towards the Business Central Online. But still, why so many customers are still running on NAV and Business Central on premises? So we'll try to reveal the answer during the discussion today. And now let's welcome Joerg from Theta. So Joerg, you're in business for many years, and you're joining from New Zealand, partner company and organization. Yeah, although you're based in New Zealand, but you do the global business. So we are here to hear how Theta is approaching Dynamics business line, and especially the Business Central area of the focus. So over to you.
Yeah, kia ora, Ugnė. Thank you very much. A little bit maybe about us. I'm not sure how many people know us and have seen us, probably in AppSource. We call this Theta by the numbers, so the most information is already in our annual report on our website. But I want to focus on is that we are 27 years in business, and from those, I heading up for the last 16 years the Dynamics 365 practice. Although we started as an NAV practice and then grown further into a full Dynamics 365 practice. So we are a $50 million revenue company and divide our business up in 7 practices, which I'll talk about a little bit more. We are all over New Zealand with our locations and offices, and we do businesses around Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific Islands. We are a Microsoft partner, obviously, but we're also holding all of the 6 solution competencies which are out there, which we're very proud of to achieve all in this broad spectrum of work. And the way we want to support and give back to the community who have helped us over the years is that we support our MVPs. We have 3 MVPs in the team, 1 for Business Central, 1 for Power Platform, and 1 for Power BI. And we do go out on conferences to speak and share our knowledge, and also take younger guys on by the hand and also motivate them to speak and blog and share their knowledge with the community. Yeah, the most people in the business actually are, the shareholders are mostly working the business, so that's good. So we're not an overseas owned company, so we're a New Zealand company, we're proud about that. Yeah, and the number of customers is of course growing as well, constantly. So next slide. So yeah, so we are split up in different practices. So let's say I'm quite happy that I can leverage the other practices in my D365 work. So if I need specialists from Power BI, for example, then I go to the data and insights practice, or need a data warehouse solution, or if you want to do, we do a lot of Logic App and Azure integration services, then I go to the digital team. But what is significant probably in this year happened, or last financial year, is that we became the second biggest practice. And I think that shows also the success of the Dynamics 365 platform and the number of customers, the number of people I have on the team. So we're growing still, we are a big and growing mode. So quite proud that we just moved up all the way to become the second biggest practice in our team here. Okay, so next slide, please. What is it what we do? Obviously, we do Business Central for a long time, but also the customer engagement space. We do sales, customer service, but we also have a strong focus on field service, which I think matches a typical ERP scenario and experience we have. Together then with project operations and marketing. So you see we are not a finance and operations partner. And well, this is the thinking we have. Should we be one for Dynamics 365 practice? But Tim said it already. We always believe that Business Central is the right size, at least in our country, and have the most success with that. So we also on our journey to the migration. Next slide, please. We thought about what we're doing with extensions and our knowledge, because I always say, how many lines of code can you write as a developer in your life, and why would you waste them? So therefore, we wanted to have more our knowledge combined into extensions, and I'm sure you guys have also a lot of PT extensions you use for your customers all the time, plus hopefully app source extensions as well. So we have by now over 70 extensions built, and we're proud that we put 6 of them into the app source marketplace. That of course helps also with overall business, because we sell most of the apps worldwide. You might have seen when you log into AppSource, which has now over 3,600 apps, therefore also the only product of the Microsoft space with the most apps really in AppSource. You might have seen us on page 1 always with the Excel importer, which of course think everyone, consultant and customer, should use. But what do I mention that is in the migration is it helped us to mature in the space of building extensions and to harness our IP in there and be faster to migrate customers into the cloud. Because often when we look at some customers which have few customizations, you will see they mostly are the same you've done before somewhere. So we can leverage our extensions and say, look, do you know what? We take away all the extensions, all the customizations, rather make a clean start and chuck in the extensions we have, and you will see you mostly be there. So therefore, it allows us to do that really quickly. So, but as I said, it matures also the way how we did extension customizations, and you probably see in the past, most even functional consultants could add a field on the table and the page. And now that has changed a bit. And I think that also shows when you go through this process of putting apps into AppSource, that what the true cost of customizations really are and what you should do when it comes to documentation, automatic testing, and so on. So I think that is something we should all include in that. And I wouldn't be surprised, and I don't know, in 5 years' time, Microsoft says there's only AppSource apps. I don't know. We still need the flexibility of customizing the customers, because that is what the success story was all over the last 3 decades. Okay, a little bit more about the migration experience. The next slide. So we actually started off early. So you always have to click a bit, Ugnė, because of getting that in. Thank you. Early with extensions in, just do it one by one, please. Right. It doesn't matter. Okay, starting early in the extensions business. So the most people, I'm not sure actually if everyone knows that extensions we have today is version 2. So where there was a version 1 version of extensions, which we also started developing, which was not probably good enough to go continue. So therefore version 2 is AL coding, which we needed and use. We started early in the preview program already because we thought that is coming. We think we are an early adopter of everyone. So we Therefore, it's probably no surprise that we also have been the first in New Zealand to deploy Business Central. Or how do I know that? I had to call Redmond to enable this queue so that we could assign the license to that customer. So therefore, I thought, okay, if no one else has done it before, then we must be the first one. But interesting, I found the poll as well to see how many have converted already their customers in there. So I think the majority have already 50% or more done. So it was good for me actually for this exercise here to count my customers. And we have 38% still on premise. On premise also means for me on platform as a service, Azure hosted, or like a hybrid one for Companial, where so basically means not Microsoft hosted, not SaaS. So and you see 62% are in the cloud. So that means for us we are now a cloud-first customer partner. We didn't implement a customer on-premise, I think, in the last 3 years. That was just how it happened. But this year we reviewed it and said, what happens if tomorrow a prospect would come and would say, look, I'm interested in Business Central, but it has to be on-premise. Well, we made the decision we would walk away then if you can't convince the customer to be in the cloud. So do we do still upgrades of existing customers from on-prem to on-prem? Yes, we do. And often that is part of a strategy for customers. When we have customers which have a lot of integration work, mostly probably done on a database level, like into staging tables and so on, the classical way, then you often deal with the customer in a lot of customizations at one place, dealing with all the other vendors which are involved to change their integration is a big deal sometimes. Also to get this all done in a timeline, because everyone is time constrained, not us as a partner, but also the customers and the other vendors. So we often want to make a cloud first or a cloud ready migration. So we upgrade the customer to an on-prem, but do it in the way that as they would run on the cloud. And that might have been a good foresight because we did this from day one on it, but you see Microsoft now introduced a penalty for on-prem customers. So if you use functionality which is typical in on-prem, like the file access or direct printing, then yeah, you have to pay extra now, except you just converted your customer to a BC license on a certain date and so on. But you probably know about that. So we have done that right away from the beginning to do this in the way to make them cloud ready so that we can move them into the cloud and then do in a second phase, deal with all the integrations and the other partners and vendors and software we have to do. What are the reasons why we still have customers on-premise? Probably all of you have the same kind of scenario. Some got hit by COVID hard, so they had other issues to solve first and didn't take the advantage in the last 2 weeks to move. Some took COVID as a reason to move forward for automation, get more efficiencies in the business, also with high inflations and salary costs. And some lost my train of thought now. And some probably security is the other big drivers we saw. We have seen that Business Central customer or NAV customers have been fully encrypted, so they couldn't use anything anymore, and didn't want to pay ransomware, and therefore ransom cost, and therefore wanted to move also away. We had one customer that actually happened, and they wanted to stay on premise, and we said there's no way they will just do this again and waiting for the day to come where it happens again. So now we moved you straight to the cloud. And we did this actually, it's more a funny story, not so much for the company itself, because it's hard when you see sometimes in the owner's eyes and you see their whole business is gone almost, that we had to recover everything from old backups, which were quite old actually. But those are the drivers and experiences we had where we thought, okay, we don't want to do this anymore. So, and we want to be cloud first. And also the recent events we had with climate catastrophes like flooding. We had customers we just moved to the cloud, and they were hit by flooding, and suddenly they said also, oh, thank God that we moved to the cloud first, and they want everything in the cloud, not even a spreadsheet on a local drive anymore. So everything has to be stored now in the cloud as well. So that's interesting stories for some customers we couldn't really convince for a long time, finally convinced them, and then events like those have shown them that they made the right move. Okay, waiting for ISV solutions is actually the topic I want to talk about a bit more. So another reason why we couldn't maybe move forward when we had industry solutions. And we think by now everyone had 3 years time plus to convert the ISV solutions into proper extensions now. If it didn't happen by now, it probably won't happen. And we're looking for alternatives. So we're not going to wait anymore for ISV solutions to happen. So, and we want to help the customers with the solutions we have out there. Also, we're working with quite a lot of ISV solutions out there on AppSource apps, because we think we should have always buy first and then build second, because of the true cost of customizations I mentioned before. So how do we talk to the customer? When we in migrations, we usually debate or discuss two aspects: the data strategy, data migration strategy, and how do we migrate customizations. In data, often it comes to the point to see first how big is your database, and for people who don't know, the database in Business Central is using the compression model, which you can do on-prem as well. Most people probably don't use it. The rule of thumb we figured out was like it's 25% is left over of it. So if you're 100 gigs on premise, you mostly end up in the 25 gigs in the cloud. So you can measure that with the 80 gigs plus the extra storage you get per users. You can then work out, does it work for your production and sandbox environments? And if not, is there any way to look at things to reduce the amount of space? Changelog and compression of GL entries, etc., might be one. So we're looking at that. But also then in combination with the customizations is to say, look, we have two extremes. One is, let's say, the clean start approach. If customers are ready for years on NIV or even BC, they mostly don't know what is customized. So therefore, they wouldn't know because they don't know anything else. So we say, oh, that's a good opportunity to see what is actually pure standard old NIV data which exists in BC and what is actually a difference. So we want to do a clean start approach, take the database, migrate it to a BC tenant and say, here it is. And now try to play through your processes and come back with the gaps you find. And then we talk about the gaps because there might be other ways and new ways to do this today, or we might have already an extension for it, or there might be an extension out there in AppSource which could leverage that. And that helps to do that very quickly. Obviously, that's for customers who are not using maybe big industrial solutions, are not heavily customized. And therefore, that's a good approach. And the other one would be maybe the other extreme, a like for like, where we say, look, we take everything as it is, every customization, and convert it. Those are the ones you can often give to another partner like Companial, because you don't have to think much about it. You say, look, if it was there before, take it over afterwards. And we have worked, well, Martynas is on the call. He was my first project manager, probably, don't know, 8 to 10 years ago on the first project we worked on doing upgrades. Always being great to come back and say, look, this is different now. How do you want to handle it? And you jump on a call with them and you just go through that and they continue, which helps also in the resource constraints probably everyone has. So that's, so the two extremes. And the other thing might be a hybrid model where we say, look, we maybe budget for the extreme case, we do everything, but we don't want to do everything. We just want to see, can we get away with less customizations and use more products? So when you think about it then, and if you do less customizations over time or less upgrades, and eventually one day all customers have been moved from on-premise to the cloud, you should have a lot of more time, right? Because you don't do these projects anymore. So, but I think we saw a shift as well in where you spend the time. So because now you have to think, okay, how do I handle my major releases with a growing number of customers? How do I keep them up to date? How do I make them aware of things they do have to address? Think about the deprecation of web service keys, where we had to go through and inform customers that other systems there, maybe consume APIs, had to be now also changed. So yeah, so we move our focus more in using also marketing emails to inform customers, make them aware of new releases, now the new features and functions are in the system, so you won't make to use of them. Then, of course, you will have still PTE extensions. If you have an extension you build and you implement in many customers, how do you make them upgrade? And what happens if you have to upgrade them because something has changed? How do you handle that? So for us, we made an updater extension, an extension which updates extensions for our own PDE extensions, where we can actually go on a press of a button and say, oh, here's 70 customers. Just go and roll it out if you want to. So there's more other things which come into play now when you migrate to it and to stay on an evergreen. So therefore, so there's other challenges which you have to face. Right, I think that's me for now, and I hand over to...
Thanks so much, Joerg. Really great experiences and a lot to learn. And I see we have a question in the chat. I guess it's for you. So the question says, are you using the intelligent cloud migration tools from Microsoft? I guess.
Yeah, so yeah, we do. So what we used is we also face sometimes issues with database sizes, that you want to make a copy on premise and the current server hasn't got enough size or it's not has enough performance. So we build up an Azure VM with SQL Server, which we use and connect the cloud migration tools to it. And that means often if you have an NIV database, you still need to migrate this database to a Business Central version. You can migrate to the cloud. So we rather do the tools already in our environment. So we take a backup from the customer and put it on our server, have all the different versions installed, running through the migration so that we can migrate it to, and then connect directly to this. I have set up everything already in terms of firewall settings and what have you. And then we migrate to that one, and that means allows us to deal with the extra space or have the performance we need. Can do this, we even clone this. We made a VM template. So if we have multiple teams running upgrades, let's say on the same weekend or same time, then we just spin up another clone of it, and then for that project, and then we have that ready and do that this way. Does that answer that question?
So in case there are more questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and our guest speakers will address them during the webinar. And now we are moving on to Dennis, the director and co-founder of iCatalyst. And Dennis, there are great rumors about iCatalyst, how successful you are in the business. And if I recall correctly, almost 2 years ago, you've started from Business Central workloads and the practice, right? So we are eager to hear, how did you come up to an idea of launching iCatalyst and how the business is going so far?
Thanks, Ugnė. I actually started iCatalyst 2.5 years ago now, back in October 2020. And in its current form, we're actually just coming on 2 years. So I started on my own about 9 months prior to that, and that was around the time that I reached out to you, Ugnė, as you would recall. And it's been a really great experience since. So we're a very new company, as I said, in its current form with my co-directors, Justin and Andrew, for about 2 years, and a lot has changed in that time. We're based in Western Australia. and our foundation client was actually to re-implement NAV 2009 onto Business Central. At that time, couldn't convince them to go into the cloud, so they remain our only on-prem Business Central client. But they've seen the light, and they will be moving to the cloud probably next year. And so, yeah, we've worked with Companial on many projects since, especially around upgrades. So yeah, today, with my co-directors, Andrew and Justin, we're a team of 30, with 24 of us based in Subiaco here in WA. And then we've got other team members dotted around on the East Coast and Sydney and Melbourne, and then also in Philippines and in Netherlands. Yeah, we're fully self-funded with no external investment, and we make all the decisions right here in WA. So on to the next slide, please, Ugnė. So we focus on all things Microsoft business applications, on ERP being Business Central and Finance and Supply Chain, CRM, Power Platform, Azure, Power Apps, Azure Integration Services. We don't get involved in the productivity apps like Office 365 or Teams or Windows or any of those things. And we also specialize in JET reports, which I've been involved in since around 2001, I think it is. And the company I was working with at that time actually brought JET reports into the Australia and New Zealand region. And I trained most of the customers and partners around the region in that time. Next slide, please, Ugnė. And in terms of our services, we do the whole project lifecycle right from scoping and design to implementation, configuration, support, and we deliver all those services in-house, as well as project management and governance. We like to be the one-stop shop for our customers, and then we provide the ongoing maintenance and support, including any licensing. So things like the bridge to cloud and all that sort of thing. We take care of all of that as well. So that's enough for me for now for the intro, and then we'll move into some of the conversations.
Thanks so much, Dennis. And so I've been recently to Directions Asia, and I would say successful migrations were one of the primary focus of the experts, also of the Microsoft there. And experts emphasize the seamless migration, the system capabilities, new platform features available. But when we are looking at the numbers, still more than 70% of NAV and Business Central install base is running on premises. So these are the huge numbers. Actually, more than 160,000 of NAV and Business Central customers are still running on premises. So if you, Dennis, and Joerg later could elaborate on how do you approach the migration topic when you're approaching your customers or new clients that are running legacy NAV. So just elaborate a bit more on the conversations that you're having with the customers and how you introduce the topic of the migrations to Business Central Online.
Yeah, I'll go first. I find that it's often driven from the customer themselves, and it's not something we really need to bring up with them. Well, not something that we push. It just comes from the conversations that we have. If a customer is on an older version, and we've done quite a few upgrades from version 2009, they will complain about many things about the current version and what all the new features and functionality that's available. And we start talking about the features, but particularly around being on the cloud, because you get the benefit of the continual updates when you're in the cloud. So once you're on the platform, you're on the platform, and there's no need for a further upgrade. So it's not like what you're used to with upgrades, where it's big, it's expensive, it's disruptive to the business. it becomes a managing process of managing the clients and helping them with the regular releases to come through. With the client that's still on-prem, they're now about 4 major versions behind, and they realize that, which is why I've said they've seen the light. And when I talk to them about a feature or functionality of some of their issues, they're like, that has been fixed in the current version, but you're an on-prem, so you haven't got the benefit of that latest feature. Or I'll say, it works better now. Or there's these other new features that are coming up, but unfortunately, as you're on-prem, you don't have the benefit of those features. And as I said, once you've moved onto the platform, there's no upgrades. It's more about managing them as a client and continuing to deliver value and focusing on keeping them happy and delivering value rather than relying on the upgrades.
And Joerg, anything to add from your end?
Yeah, it would be interesting to see what the numbers would be in our region, because from the conversations I had in the last directions in Hamburg, I can see that Australia and New Zealand is quite leading with being in cloud, where Central Europe, the most people still hesitant to do that for whatever reasons, I don't know, actually, because they have all the data centers in front of them, and we in New Zealand just have the data center in Australia East. So therefore, we would be probably a good example to say, look, our data center is a bit far away compared to you guys in Europe, and it still works for us, right? So the conversations have shifted maybe with customers a bit, because let's say 2 or 3 years ago, it was still a thing, or is it ready for cloud? Now that's not a discussion anymore. So what people want in the cloud is more, is the organization ready, or have they got the funds to do? Because it's that last upgrade they have to do, right? And do they have also the people available? Is it the right time for them? So that is mostly the discussions we're having with them. The ability to just add functionality quickly from, for example, app source is a big driver for a lot of customers. So therefore, we do have the conversation about that model, because business requirements can change quickly. And if they do change, how do we get actually quickly this functionality in? And that is a big benefit, that model. And of course, we also promote the Power Platform and the entire ecosystem of that. So the power is in the platform. So therefore, we're not looking at this as a single application on-prem anymore. We're looking at this as business application suite as well. So therefore, that's also something which motivates customers to look at that from that angle and move to the cloud.
So I also certainly hear that there are various limitations, right, preventing customers from moving to the cloud, to Business Central Online. So what would you name as the most important, or like the major limitations that are really important and need to be evaluated well in advance before engaging your customers for a cloud conversations? Joerg, if you would like to continue.
Yeah, probably as a partner, you often think, maybe at least in the beginning of the journey, can I do everything I could do on premise in the cloud as well? Is there any technical thing which you have to overcome? You might need to look at this from a different angle of doing things. But in all the years, we said we haven't had an issue where we said, we could only do this on premise. Right? There is so many options you can do. So we found always a way to make it in the cloud.
Dennis, anything to add from your end?
Yeah, a couple of things. One is if the client has just invested in a new server and they run a very lean IT team, so they don't have a large overhead in terms of people that look after their IT infrastructure. and if they say, they've just bought a new server and they want to realize the benefits and the return on that server, they would be hesitant to go with the cloud because they might have just spent 50, 100 grand on the server and they want to use that first. And that was actually the case with the client I was referring to. They had bought a new server, and they also ran a very lean team. So other objections to going to the cloud is the usual. Cost and time is part of the upgrade, but there's also the uncertainty and fear of the cloud, which is less of an issue these days. But 10 years ago, it was still unknown. So it was this fear of the uncertain and the unknown. And one other is internet connectivity. So we have talked to some prospects in the past who feared about the cloud, in that they run almost a 24/7 operation, manufacturing operation, and they cannot afford for the internet to go down, because if the internet goes down, BC goes down, and they can't do anything. So that was one of their fears. And also, if the client is in a remote area, is in the country, and again, some concerns about internet connectivity. So it comes down to the criticality, the time criticality of their operations.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing. And last but not the least question. So if we would compare a project now and we were doing them 10, 15 years ago, so from like the pros and cons perspective, from like the partner side, right? So what benefits you as a partner are getting, like implementing the project on Business Central Online versus comparing when you were doing that like 10, 15 years ago? Do you see any differences how the business is being run in terms of revenue, profitability, and also return on investment, right? Comparing like the old time projects and how they are being approached now. And Dennis.
Yep. First of all, what I'd say is, these days, 15 years ago, we've had to educate prospects on what NAV is. But these days, because of the great work that Microsoft have done, they've already done that research, they've pre-selected Business Central, and it becomes a case of selecting, seeing that BC is the right solution, and then selecting the partner to implement. Just in terms of ROI of implementations, I think it's great. The fact that once clients get onto the platform, they no longer have to go through another upgrade, which is very disruptive and costly, high risk. And the other big benefit is often it's at a point when the client is deciding, should I upgrade or should I not upgrade, is when they think, I might as well consider other solutions at this point in time. So that's no longer an issue, because it's, as I said, once you're on the platform, you're on the platform. And, if they decide to look at another solution, it's because of another reason. There is no kind of point in time that kind of gets them to start thinking about other solutions. So that risk is diminished somewhat. And there's plenty of value-added services that we can offer to the client without imposing an upgrade on them. And so the focus becomes delivering value to the client, and keeping them happy without having to have those discussions. And the work will come your way, just in terms of as a reflection of how well you're servicing your client.
Joerg?
Yeah, think about what is different also is not just if a customer is on premise for a while that they have a technical debt which is building up and cost more to move. But I think also supporting takes longer and harder, because if you implement BC in the cloud all these years and suddenly you need to change an SSL certificate on an on-prem server, then you don't find maybe the right person anymore who just remember that to do this. So therefore, certain skills we see are not saying get forgotten, but you get rusty on them. and that means the support takes more time to do. So therefore, helping a customer on a modern version is faster than helping a customer on an older version. So that's something which you also want to take into account. Plus, of course, everyone has their own development environments, and they have to hold that kind of thing ready. So that's also a cost for partners on top of it. So where we also think, why would we just keep our servers and databases where we have development environments? We wouldn't have that issue when we're in the cloud. So yeah. And I do echo Dennis here in the discussion. Once the customer is on the cloud, you don't have that big investment all the time. Therefore, which is often, of course, a discussion to say, look, if I have to take so much money in my hands to move, is BC or NIV the right solution for us still? Which is also, of course, maybe a fear a partner might have. Is look, if I have to take this customer over with all these customizations, it's going to be a big thing. So, but the user adoption is so much better and faster. So we have never seen actually an issue with somebody using an old, maybe, or even normal RTC client, and then suddenly have to use the browser for it. So they see also these days with the browser application more functionality actually than in the RTC. So therefore they think, oh, I can do this and I can do it, and they just realize, oh, that is kind of NIV. It just looks modern. So therefore, users feel home quicker. So and that gives confidence to the business that the upgrade is easier, because users have to do their work at the end of the day. So and decision makers say, look, that's fine. That is one risk less I have moving over, and I know the functionality is there as I used it.
Exactly. I think user experience is a key also, like, right, a driver that also should be driving the decisions towards moving to Business Central Online. So we touched upon why and what is Business Central, what are the features, why partners should be migrating there, and partners also shared their great experiences and stories. And now we have Martynas, my colleague, who will tell us how Companial is moving our global partners and helping to move those partner customers towards the cloud, and what are Companial strategies of executing the migration. So Martynas, over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for introduction, Ugnė. So I'm trying to take over the control. I hope you will see the slides changing. Yeah, okay. So as Ugnė told, I would like to talk today about how Companial can help partners in the journey to the Business Central Online. So as we are helping many partners in the world, we have quite experience already doing the work. So first, about the challenges when you are upgrading to the Business Central Online, what we hear from partners and their customers. So there are many challenges moving there. So starting with first, you need to know the amount of work you will have to be performing to do the migration project, and it is time as well consuming to do the analysis of your customers. If you have a big base of the customers, it might take even months to assess all of the customers. So it's time consuming, and you are better spending the time on the new implementations. Another challenge is the budget of the project. So are you going to fit in the budget? Are you going out from the budget? If you don't do the analysis good enough, you might end up being given twice more expenses than you have planned. Then the capacity challenge, that you have a full load of work implementing new customers, and then you have these customers running on-premise versions that you need to migrate, and you need to prioritize. And as Tim mentioned, the upgrading is not a new stream of revenue. It is like maintaining your stream of revenue. So most probably you want to concentrate more on the new implementations. And then time. If you do not have enough skilled people to do the upgrade projects, the project might be quite lengthy process if you cannot assign enough people. And for the customers, it might not be, well, how to say, they might not be willing to migrate because it takes just too long. So what, as a Companial, how can we help the partner? So we have a really nice tool called Companial Upgrade Analyzer. So it's a tool in our portal working 24/7, as it is an online that you can access. So our upgrade analyzer saves time for the partners because it is a free of charge tool where you can upload your customer solutions, and we would do all the analysis and provide you with the assessments of how to migrate the customers into the BC Online. And we would provide not only one option, like one number for migration, but there will be multiple options that you can choose from and even customize those in our portal so that you can compare different possibilities of going to the BC Online. It minimizes your risk as all our proposals are fixed price, so you will not run out of your budget. We take all the risk on that part, and having all this information in mind, you can easily create a detailed plan for the next steps. So how does it work? It's quite easy to use. You need to register on our portal, and then there is an upload form where you need to fill some basic information about the solution that you want to get an assessment of. So like which NAV or BC version it is currently on, what is database size, number of companies, and as well upload an FOB file of the customer solution or AL files compressed to zip file so that we could do the analysis. Then we have automated tools running for a few days and as well doing some manual verification of the output, and within 5 business days, you would get our analysis completed. So you would be notified by email. You can go into our portal back and look in what outputs are. You can choose the option that fits the best for your customer and ask for agreement and execute a successful upgrade project with us. So what you would see as an output in the upgrade analyzer are always these 5 options that we provide. 2 of the options are for upgrading to the on-premises, if there's still a case that you have to do this, and 3 options are to upgrading through Business Central Online. As Joerg as well mentioned, there are 2 ways actually how you want to upgrade the customer. Either you do the clean start, going only with the data to the Business Central Online, and then implement the customizations by replacing them with the apps from the app source, or you have other extensions not yet on the app source that you can use, or build new extensions, PT extensions on the modern way. So then you can use the clean start option. The full upgrade option to the BC Online includes the data migration, but as well all customizations upgrade into the Business Central. So we would be moving all of the customizations that exist today and converting it into the extension for the Business Central. So this is more suitable for the customers that are not too heavily customized. Their customizations are quite recent, so they are not working with NAV for 20 or 30 years. So they have quite recent implementation, maybe NAV 2015, 16, 17 implementation. But if they are quite an old user for the NAV, they usually has unnecessary customizations or built in very bad way that it is time consuming to upgrade and it might be costly. The ones that are quite big and complex, but still needs everything they have today in the system, we suggest to have the middle option, the lift and shift, where the first step would be to going into the Business Central on-premise, to still have some of the limitations for BC Online not resolved because they are very complicated, and then within 1 or 2 years work on resolving the limitations that left, and then go into the Business Central Online version. Okay. So once you are on the Business Central Online, is it already the end? Are you happy, live there, don't worry about anything? Actually, not exactly, even though that it is much more simple being on the BC Online and maintaining your solution in the BC Online than being on-prem and doing the upgrades. There still is something that you need to be aware of. And I like to present it as being on BC Online is similar to flying with an airplane. So in BC Online, we have small updates coming up every month. With the airplane flying, there might be some small storms in the clouds that comes up and gives you a little bit of a turbulence that as a pilot of the plane, you don't need to do anything. You just fly it through. It's a very small turbulence that does not affect your flight schedule, course, or anything. So it's similar with the small minor updates from Microsoft. Those does not usually affect anyhow your solution in BC Online. But once a new major release of the Business Central is coming, it might include some breaking changes for your solution. So it can be as well compared to a big storm in the clouds when you are flying. And then there's an action that the pilot needs to take. It needs to go over the storm, goes from one side or from above, but you don't want to hit the storm as it might be some bad things happening afterwards. So what does it mean for the pilot? So you can fly it over. But if you do not take certain actions while you are flying with an airplane, then the airplane might crash. Similar is in the BC Online. So if you will not take actions when the new major version is released, then within 60 days, if your tenant extensions or your app source app is not compatible for the new version, it would be uninstalled from the solution and the tenant would be forced upgraded. And then there are 150 days to get your data out of the Business Central and move it somewhere. No one wants to be on that, so everyone is taking care of the extensions in the BC Online, fixing them, and then they are going further into the journey with the new version. And then again, small updates are coming that does not affect your solution anyhow, and half a year later, a new big update is coming that you might need to take some actions on. So to tackle this challenge for the partners, we have a service called Extension Maintenance Subscription. So this service is applicable both for the apps on the app source or for the tenant extensions that you have built for your customers. It is a service of a fixed price monthly fee. So we analyze the solution you want to be maintained, and depending on the complexity of the solution, of how much risk it is involved in that solution. So the price is unique for each solution, and we set a fixed monthly fee that you need to pay. And then with each major release, we would be testing the solution. So doing the compilation test, making sure that all the code is compatible with new Business Central version, running automated tests, fixing if anything is not working, updating automated tests. So keeping the solution up to date that you wouldn't need to worry about it. And if it is an app source app, we can as well offer pre-validation. So checking that there would be no problems going into the app source after the update. And what value does it bring to the partners. So we are removing the technical maintenance overhead. So it's not that you are giving some additional benefit to your customer, bringing new value, new, I don't know, functionality, processes. It is just maintaining the customer, and it is overhead that you cannot plan very much in advance. So it disturbs your usual business of doing implementations, or even if you are doing the upgrade work yourself. So maintaining these customers, you need to be always aware, okay, new major release is coming, how much of the resources I need to plan for that. So you can remove that overhead from you and focus on your customer needs. You will not have any capacity spikes if there are big breaking changes coming up in the next major release. All you need to do is just focus on your main business, so doing customers implementation. And as well, important thing is it is a very predictable total cost of ownership, as it is a fixed price monthly fee. So very often we are explaining the service, we compare it to the insurance, as you can buy insurance for your house, for your car. So you just pay a small monthly fee, and you are sure that if something will happen, you will not have any problems. The insurance will fix it. So this is it from today, what I wanted to share. So going back to you, Ugnė.
Thanks so much, Martynas. Again, a lot of food for thoughts, right? Like on what are the things we need to consider before doing the migration. And I think my key takeaway from your session is that each of us, we need to focus on our primary business, right? If you're focusing on your selling your vertical solution or selling Business Central towards the new customers, then migrations could be done by some other party like Companial or the other ones, and where they also have the focus and quality services there. So I see that my colleague has pasted also an ebook in the chat, so please feel free to download that one where we have all the migration strategies listed in more detail, just for you to learn and acquire that knowledge as well. And before ending up the session, so in the beginning of the webinar, we launched a poll, and the question was, what percentage of customers from your install base have you already moved to Business Central SaaS? And I will ask Tim to comment on the results. They are actually really interesting. So I would say 50% of the partners said that, yeah, they are still on their way to the cloud, while more than 50 already have migrated their NAV to Business Central Online. So what are your observations here, Tim?
Yeah, interesting figures. Obviously, I can't say too much or reveal too much, but I can tell you that in the heyday of Dynamics NAV, we probably had about 20, 25 what I call active partners in Australia. In the old days, we've got a lot more than that than in Business Central, which is great. A lot more, actually. But I still have at least 29 partners with more than 5 customers on-prem. And when you go down to 19, I have 19 customers with more than 10, 19 partners with more than 10 customers on-prem. So there's still a lot out there. And when you think about capacity to upgrade, how many upgrades can a partner do per year? And that's probably a question for Joerg and Dennis to kind of respond to. So how many, either one of you or both of you, how many upgrades could you do per year and whilst you're doing your new business? What sort of capacity level?
Well, the answer is always depends, right?
Yeah.
So how big they are, and so yes, but you're right. There is, of course, a limit to it. So
Yeah.
But
and
we
that's
haven't
without adding Companial in the back, obviously, to help. I kind of it depends on resource sizes. So it is a trick question. But the reality is that I think when partners look at the number of on-prem customers they had and they turned around and said, let's all upgrade them all today, and they all said, let's do it. I think looking at the total number in Australia, I don't think we have enough partners to do it in 5 years, let alone in a year. So that's interesting. One very exciting thing for me, but is our cloud revenue is more than our Business Ready Enhancement Plan revenue on Business Central as of this month. So that means that Business Central has outgrown the customers that are still paying Business Ready Enhancement Plan. And when I give these numbers, I'm only talking about customers that are still paying the Business Ready Enhancement Plan, not the customers paying through cloud, through CSPEP, or customers that have still got the system that aren't actually paying any maintenance. So there's a lot more than what I'm talking about. In fact, if I look at the numbers globally, it's about 3 times the size based off what I see based off the numbers we announced globally. It's actually 3 times the amount of what I've got in Australia. So the positive thing is cloud is, and I can see this already. I know where we are customers worldwide, and I know what we've done in less than 4.5 years, compared to what we did in Navision over 13 years. We're more than 60% of the way there. So we'll outgrow. We're growing faster than what NAV was growing, and in Australia and New Zealand, it's about 92% growth in 3 years, year on year. So just to give you an idea, it's growing quite strongly. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, definitely a lot of partners still out there with a lot of on-prem customers, that then there's an opportunity to migrate them to cloud and build your cloud services.
Wow, really amazing numbers, and thanks for sharing, Tim. So let's summarize and close the session by providing one tip per each. How would you summarize the overall event, and what would be your tip to the partners who joined the session? So one tip per each. Joerg?
Well, a tip is, for us, it was adopting new technology and doing things first has paid out for us. So you should not hesitate to look into new things, because that was working good for us. If I just can have one comment on Tim, because it sounded more like all the partners have no capacity, so therefore the customers are not upgrading. I disagree with that a bit. So let's say if we see we are busy with, of course, with work, but we're mostly busy with also new implementations. So if an existing customer wants to upgrade, they can upgrade. If a new prospect has to wants to implement, we might make them wait, but not our existing customers. So, but we try to manage, of course, always. So, but I think that is, at the moment, we can see the ball is more in the customer's court than it's in the constraint of the partner.
Thank you, Joerg. Dennis?
Well, my one bit of advice is just, go and talk to your customers. And in that, you'll probably pick up, cues in there to then start talking about moving to the cloud.
Martynas?
Yeah, so my tip would be that it's not that many reasons why customers should not go into the cloud. So as Joerg and Dennis mentioned, well, if you have internet connection, the cloud is suitable for you. So no other excuse.
Tim?
Yes, so you're right. I'm talking more about if all the customers want to upgrade today. It's kind of more that capacity issue. But I think the one thing I would do is over the years, as I've seen businesses grow, what happens is they normally stall when they run out of capacity to service. So as you're growing your business, you're growing your resources, the stalling point is when I start to run out of capacity, and that's also when the quality is at risk, because you start to, I suppose, what's the word for it? You start to randomize your team to deliver. So I think if you're taking the approach of don't take more work on than you can, that's a great idea. But it's also a way to grow through, and this is kind of why we support the conversation around scale partners like Companial, by having those people behind you that can help take on the work as you're growing. And obviously there's learnings there and how you work together, etc. But to me, I see it as a good way to, as I can grow my business, and grow my business in a nice planned way versus being rationalized. And plus we have the challenge where business changes from year to year. But the one thing I will say is, the last thing I'll say, and sorry, you asked for one thing, but Business Central is driven through partners. So partners are key to what we do. So thank you all the partners that are online still for everything you do for our community and for Business Central. And next year we will be putting more investment back into you and also into our channels. But I'll talk about that in FY24.
Thanks so much. A great summary of everything. So thank you for joining our webinar. We really hope it was beneficial and you are taking something out from it. So have a nice afternoon, and we hope to see you soon. Goodbye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.